Welcome to the Pint Glass Football Podcast.
Pint Glass Football, NFL and college football. I'm your host, Brad Fowler. What's up, PGF Nation? The NFL draft is over. It's time to give out some more team draft grades, and today it's the AFC North. We'll tell you the picks we liked and didn't like for each team in this division, and of course, grade each team. And joining me, like always, my co-host, Alex Higdon. Alex, what is going on?
Best part of the draft, or rather after the draft, is grading every team.
Man, no doubt about it. And guys, if you haven't checked it out already, we just got done a couple days ago with the NFC North draft grades. We kicked it off with obviously the NFC North because Chicago had the first pick. So if you haven't listened to that, go back and check it out. Today we're going to shift to the AFC North. This one's fun because there's a couple teams that hit it out of the park, and there's a couple teams that I think really had us left wondering what direction they were going in. Alex, let's start with the Baltimore Ravens, though. A team that historically drafts really, really well. I think they did it again this year. They start out in the first round taking Nate Wiggins with the 30th pick, one of the fastest corners in this class. I mean, this guy is lightning. He's got terrific effort, which I love when I put on this guy's tape. Never gives up on the play, high energy guy, has good length, just a gifted cover corner. He's got really good instincts. This guy was my second ranked corner in this class. I am a big fan of his game. I think he has great closing speed and was a great value at pick 30, and it fills a need for this Baltimore Ravens team. I think this was a great way for them to start the draft.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we know one of the biggest issues that they had last year was that back end of the defense, obviously the injury to Marcus Williams. However, and also the injury to Marlon Humphreys. As unfortunately, he's been slowing down a little bit back-to-back years with injuries. So bringing in some youth, giving a jolt to this team in Nate Wiggins that can play on the other side. Marlon Humphrey, we know when he's on his game, he's one of the, if not top two, probably maybe the best on-ball defender, especially in the man-to-man and press coverage defender. And Nate Wiggins gets to learn from one of the best in the league.
Yeah, perfect culture fit, and I think he's really going to fit what they want to do defensively as well. I like their second-round pick as well, Alex. The tackle out of Washington, Roger Rosengarten. This is a guy that I had a late first-round grade on. I thought he had potential to maybe sneak into that first round. He's that kind of player. Great value pick, getting him in the second round. High upside player. I don't think we've seen his best football. Still developing, but you can see the traits and the ability on tape. He's athletic, moves well for his size, and once again, addresses a need for them. I really like this pick in Roger Rosengarten.
Yeah, as we know in the offseason, it's basically like the Ravens and Jets simply just traded because the Jets took their entire right side of the offensive line and Morgan Moses as well as the guard. And bringing in Rosengarten really is a day one starter, has played big time football at Washington. We know he's going to fit right in. We know what type of team. We already talked about the culture, and he's a guy, and he did fit a need. And in this second round, getting a guy of this magnitude, once again, the Ravens hit it out of the park.
Absolutely, Alex. In the third round, they addressed the defense once again. Edge defender Adesai Isaac out of Penn State. The other edge defender out of Penn State, we know Chop Robinson went in the first round, but this guy was really good value in the third round. I think this is a guy who's probably a top 50 player in this draft. Great handwork, is a guy that really competes as a pass rusher, had 69 pressures and 13 sacks. So highly productive player in college. And quite frankly, he outplayed Chop Robinson on tape.
Yeah, and once again, the Ravens adding to the already deep, edge rushers that they have. We know what they have with Odafe. We know that David Ojabo, he's going to be able to come back again another year, away from that Achilles injury that he had. They brought in a veteran in Kyle Van Noy in front of him, so he has great players around him that are young that are going to be able to grow with him, and then a great teacher in Kyle Van Noy that'll help bring him along.
So they had 2 fourth-round picks. starting with wide receiver Devontae Walker out of North Carolina. This is a big play threat, a guy that can stretch the field. He had a terrible showing at the Senior Bowl. There's really no way around it. I mean, the guy just really kind of hurt his draft stock during the Senior Bowl practices and then had a poor showing during the game, dropped a lot of balls, just didn't look like the type of player that we thought he would coming into this pre-draft process. But look, he's a talented player, very athletic guy, and an explosive wide receiver. In the 4th round, I think it's nice value because I do think there's a lot of upside with a guy like this. Too many drops, though, a little too inconsistent on tape. I'm not as high on him as most, but I understand the pick. And like I said, in the 4th round, I don't have a problem with this pick at all.
Yeah, again, the Ravens are often going to the well to try and find these wide receivers. They finally truly did hit on one in Zay Flowers. That wide receiver room, Rashad Bateman, a first round pick from 21, if I'm not mistaken. He's shown a flash here and there, but he is struggling to stay healthy. Here you get a guy in Tez Walker who has some big playability, and we know what type of offense this can look like if Lamar is on the boundary and can look downfield and make some plays happen that we've seen throughout his career. But you bring in Tez Walker, and hopefully you can develop him into, if not moving ahead of Rashad Bateman, but at least pressing for time. And now you're creating a lot of competition to push players to be better than they were the previous year.
Now, Alex, they had a 2nd, 4th round pick, and I know that both of us are really high on this guy, cornerback TJ Tampa out of Iowa State. Look, guys, if you haven't already checked out the YouTube channel, we've been doing some exclusive video coverage over there. We just put out a video recently with our favorite draft steals, the biggest draft steals of 2024. This guy absolutely made your list, Alex, because he's one of the biggest steals in this entire draft. Late 1st round, early 2nd round grade on this guy. I'm shocked that he was available in the 4th round. He's a long, disruptive defender. He's good in run support. Just a great all-around cornerback in the 4th round. And once again, the Ravens continue to find value throughout this draft. I think they added some nice depth later in the draft. But look, if you just chalk it up, these first 5 picks are absolute home runs for the Baltimore Ravens. I think they crushed another draft and added an infusion of young talent to this already talented roster. For me, Alex, this is an A-plus draft.
Yeah, I have to agree there as well. Another A+ for Eric DaCosta, and I'm always going to mention Ozzie Newsome as he is still in the building. And when you start getting into the 4th rounds and later, and you hit on, well, I don't want to say hit, but you get value in Tez Walker and you get TJ Tampa. Again, we spoke about Marlon Humphreys. This is a guy that's going to be able to step in and perhaps save a few snaps for Marlon Humphreys. So in critical times, they'll be able to have him on the field. And also, he can maybe even do some nickel coverage as well, and they'll be able to rotate these guys between Nate Wiggins and TJ Tampa within that defensive backfield, which was struggling, and they've been losing players over the past 2 years. Brad, similar to their AFC North counterparts, the Pittsburgh Steelers have a great scouting department, have a really good front office, and just have been consistent, at least in this modern era of the NFL, have been consistent in what they do. And once again, I think they've done well in this draft, starting with their first pick in Troy Fainu from Washington. Now, the thing with Troy, there was a lot of talk about him perhaps moving inside, but we know with the way the Steelers are set up, they were looking for a right tackle, and a left tackle, and Troy can come and slide right in and be a day one starter for this team. They went to the trenches again in the 2nd round with Zach Frazier from West Virginia. So now you got your tackle. You drafted a tackle last year, and now you got a center. I think we know where Pittsburgh is heading with these first 2 picks.
Yeah, absolutely, Alex, because look, they addressed the offensive and defensive lines in this class, and they went after it. And I think they hit some picks out of the park, starting with Troy Fainu out of Washington. This is a guy, tremendous tape at Washington. The ability jumps off the screen. He's such a good athlete, has the measurables that you're looking for to play left tackle at the next level. And then to go and get Zach Frazier with the next pick there, I had him as the 2nd best center in this class. I think that was nice value where they got him. So when you're talking about a guy like Fainu, who I think has all pro potential, I think he's that good because, like I said, not only was his tape excellent, but then he put on a show at the combine and really showed scouts and GMs just how special of a talent he is.
Absolutely. And then when you go and you look into the in the third round, they go and they get Roman Wilson. Now, Roman Wilson at Michigan ran the routes that you would probably have your slot receiver run in the NFL. He's a player that I believe that will be able to fit right in. And I think similarly to what Harbaugh did in Michigan, a lot of the things is what Roman Wilson is going to be able to fit for the Steelers. A lot of those crossing routes, a lot of those short intermediate routes in the middle of the field, and looking at how they have been shaping up in the wide receiver room. Now, we know Pittsburgh is known for their wide receivers. So regardless of what anybody may think about this pick, they have a track record that says we should trust what they've done. Now, I would have probably wanted to see them get another boundary guy, but in Roman Wilson, you get somebody that's sure-handed, that's going to run crisp routes, and that's going to be available for whichever quarterback they have going into the future.
Yeah, I thought the Roman Wilson pick was really solid. They needed to add another wide receiver to this room. Productive player. I mean, this guy had 12 touchdowns last season in a run-first offense. I also like what I saw from him at the combine when he ran that 4.39 40-yard dash. I think people realized, okay, wait a second. This guy might just be a better athlete than maybe we were giving him credit for at Michigan. So I like that pick in the third. I think it was good value. And you hit on it with Peyton Wilson, another guy that we talked about on our YouTube video with the biggest steals in this draft. Look, the medical concerns are legitimate. I get that. But this guy is a special, special talent and a guy that I think if he can stay healthy, and I know it's a big question mark, but if he can, I think he can have an immediate impact for the Steelers as well.
Yeah, and then fourth on, they just really went in for depth. I do like Mason McCormick out of South Dakota State, little known player coming out of there, but they do have some age from James Daniels at the guard position. So I think you can bring him in and then develop him along slowly. I think one of the things that we talk about with this league, specifically as you talked about with the Ravens, and I can talk about it with Pittsburgh, is about developing players because every single player is not going to look like an all-pro right when they come in the league. Sometimes you have to bring them along slowly and you have to develop them. So I think that's what, when they go in later in the draft, Mason McCormick, Logan Lee, Ryan Watts, these are guys that are developmental players. Mason McCormick specifically, I think will be a guy that can stick with the team, they'll be able to use him in the future. So overall, I gave the Steelers an A. It's just too much value, especially when you got to that third and fourth round. That's where, as a GM, you really truly make your money, is finding these guys that are going to be high contributors and possibly, high profile starters in the future. And I think they did that once again with this team, with this draft. So I give them an A.
Every pick made sense and they really addressed needs throughout this draft. And I think every single pick you can look at and say, okay, big time player or big time value. And they check those marks. I know you love these South Dakota State guys, Alex. That team had a lot of talent this year. For a small school, I can't believe how many players are coming out of that program. You mentioned Mason McCormick. I think he's a top 5 guard in this class. To get him in the fourth round at pick 119, I think that was great value too. So once again, all the way through the fourth round and multiple third round picks, I think they just hit on a lot of guys here that are going to be contributors early for this Steelers team. So I'm with you. I think this is an A class all the way. Alex, let's get to a couple classes that I don't think were as good as Pittsburgh and Baltimore. Now, we know those two classes back-to-back here were really special on paper. I'm not as excited about this Cleveland Browns class. Now, they didn't have as much draft capital, but I don't love what they did with some of these picks. It starts in the second round with defensive tackle Michael Hall out of Ohio State. I think this is a solid pick. Now, this is a guy who had a really good pass rush win rate in college football. That's something that I like to look at as an identifier to see, okay, is he getting in the backfield? Is he disruptive? And he definitely is. And he's a guy with high upside as far as being an interior pass rusher. Not consistent enough for me, though. There was too many times where he disappears on tape. a bit undersized. I think he needs some improvement in the run game. So I didn't love this pick. I understand they needed some help up front. Position wise, I think it makes sense. Second round might have been a little early for Michael Hall. What did you think, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where they were looking at or what they were thinking specifically with that pick. I kind of tried to take a look at their depth chart to understand. And, once I see certain things, it's like, well, maybe I didn't see why they might have brought this guy in or what they were thinking on their end. So I wasn't sure what direction they were trying to go in with that pick. I mean, it's a double. It's just I'm not sure I would have gone there in the second round.
Yeah, their next pick I do like, and I think they had really good value taking guard Zach Zinter out of Michigan. Now, Zach Zinter suffered that leg injury in Michigan's final regular season game. Before the injury, though, I thought this was a guy who had legit first-round talent, and I think you can make a case that he's arguably the best guard in this entire class. He's certainly in the discussion. The leg injury made things a lot murkier and, of course, hurt the value for him coming into the draft, knowing that his rookie year is probably going to be more of a redshirt year, so to speak. But I do like that selection because this is a guy who was a really consistent player at Michigan, a high-level player for that Michigan offensive line. So I think there's nice value there, and a guy that down the road I think is going to be definitely a big-time contributor for the Browns.
Zach Zinter, I agree with you. My favorite pick from their draft. They have Joel Bettino, a solid veteran in front of him, who's going into the last year of his deal, or rather the second to last year of his deal. So we know what that means. It is a business. But these Michigan guys, we know what this offensive line was doing at Michigan, playing in a pro-style offense, and we know they know how to run block. Now, we can maybe perhaps talk about this, maybe a little bit of he needs to be coached up a little bit more on the passing side, but as far as an interior blocker and against the run, this guy is nasty work on the inside. And as I alluded to before, with Joe Bettino going into the final year's contract, he's going to be 34, 35 years old coming up. You have a guy that you'll be able to have him sit behind for a year, learn from the veteran, and then eventually he can take over that spot going into the future.
So the Browns didn't have another pick until the fifth round. They finally decide to pull the trigger on a wide receiver in the fifth round with Jamari Thrash at pick 156. For me, it's not that I can't see the talent, just too many drops. And look, this is a guy who put up good numbers. He was productive at Louisville. He's good after the catch. I mean, he's a guy who can make guys miss in the open field. I just think there were better players available, and I don't think I would have gone that direction. And wide receivers who have drop issues, to me, that's about as big of a red flag as I can find for a wide receiver. I mean, let's face it, your number one job is to catch the football.
One of our steals that we talked about yesterday, Brendan Rice, was still available as well. So, and I believe we kind of mocked him around maybe the fourth and back into the fourth, fifth round, but nonetheless, he was still there. Over the last year and a half, the Browns have reworked their entire starting wide receiver, their wide receiver room as a whole. You now have Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, and Jerry Jeudy as your starters. Them recently trading for Jerry Jeudy this offseason, and then giving him a contract. I just felt that perhaps they should have gone after a stronger wide receiver. Again, I'll just allude to saying Brendan Rice again. So I just didn't like the pick. The player, good. I just didn't like the pick. And if that's where you were going, I thought there were better players available at that point in time.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And look, I wasn't really that excited about the guys they took in the 6th or 7th rounds either. For me, Alex, this was a pretty underwhelming class for this Browns team. Zach Zinter kind of saves this grade from being as bad as I think it would be without that pick. That one pick kind of saves me from really tanking this class. I'm going to give them a C+. I think they missed on some opportunities to enhance this roster at a couple different spots in this draft. They could have gone in different directions. And for me, if you're a Browns fan, that's got to be a little bit discouraging.
Yeah, Brad, I'm going to agree with you on the lower grade. C+ if you just want to push a little bit more, because the Jamari Thrash is not a bad pick. It's just the guy we want to take in. So if you want to just add a little plus there, you can. But it's definitely a C for me as well.
Did you know that Pint Glass Football is more than just this podcast? We have an exclusive newsletter. Sign up for free at pintglassfootball.com to receive articles and insights delivered straight to your inbox. But wait, there's more. We're excited to announce our brand new YouTube channel. Not only can you listen to our podcast on YouTube, but you'll also find exclusive video content waiting for you. So hit the pause button right now and go subscribe to our newsletter, and hit that subscribe button on YouTube to stay connected with the latest football news and our exclusive content. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. I personally love the pick'em game. Just pick between 2 and 5 players to build a pick'em entry. Pick whether your favorite players will have a higher or lower stat total in this week's game for a chance to win big. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single night. Download the Underdog Fantasy app and sign up today with promo code PGF. That's promo code PGF to get your first deposit doubled up to $100. The official ticketing app of Pint Glass Football is now SeatGeek. I can't recommend them enough, guys. I've been using SeatGeek for years. You want to go to a game this season? SeatGeek is here to take the confusion out of buying tickets, making sure you get the best seats at the best prices. With SeatGeek, you'll never have to worry about overpaying for tickets again. How? They put a 0 to 10 score on each ticket, so you know you're getting a good deal. But here's the real game changer. You can get $20 off your first ticket purchase with the code PGFPOD. That's right, $20 off with code PGFPOD. This season, make every game day epic with SeatGeek. Download the SeatGeek app and remember to enter the code PGFPOD to grab your $20 discount.
Last but not least, Brad, the perennial Super Bowl contending team when Joe Burrow is healthy, Cincinnati Bengals. And right out the gate, in terms of when we start talking about the health and Joe Burrow and where this team goes when Joe Burrow is healthy, is they immediately address the offensive line. I mean, and when I say they address the offensive line, they went big. And big, huge Amarius Mims, 6'8", 340-pound left tackle coming out of Georgia. A guy, when healthy, is a monster. Strength, hand control, has that punch. If you ever watch them talk about offensive linemen, has that punch when he's available. And I liken him a lot to Mekhi Becton from the Jets. A player of this size, Mekhi Becton was actually about 23 pounds heavier than the 340 pounds Mims is, but he was hampered by a lot of injuries throughout his career. But when he's healthy, you're not getting past him. And if the Cincinnati Bengals can keep Amarius Mims healthy and in a really good rotation, because they also did bring on oft-injured Trent Brown from the New England Patriots. But if you can get a good mixture where you even out the snaps and these guys can both stay healthy, I think on the right side, as he'll start on the right side of this offensive line, you'll be able to have your bookends in order to keep Joe Burrow up and healthy for 17 games.
Big time talent. No doubt about it, man. You are right. This guy has incredible physical ability, really long arms. Like you mentioned, the size, the feet. This guy has maybe the biggest ceiling of any tackle in this loaded tackle class. I love this pick where they got him at pick 18, and I'm with you. I think he's a day one starter on the right side.
Absolutely. Now, the second round pick is actually a really good pick in Chris Jenkins out of Michigan. Again, we know what that Michigan defense was, and this was one of the key pieces. We know what's going to happen next year with that defensive tackle we'll name later that's going to be coming out of Michigan. But Chris Jenkins was a solid player in the middle of this defense, strong at the point of attack, do some rushing and pushing and getting pressure up the middle as well, and plays the run and the pass. So I wanted to start out by saying that. However, the number one issue that I've seen with the Cincinnati Bengals since their Super Bowl run is they had let go of everybody in the defensive backfield. they had lost both safeties, and they had also lost Eli Apples, a corner, even though Eli Apples kind of a running joke in the league. But in that defense, he was pretty solid, and that defense was ranked 5 when they had that backfield there. Now, you drafted DJ Turner last year. From my perspective, was a little bit of a reach, but you needed to go there because you absolutely needed somebody. However, I think at this point in time, in the second round, you could have on the board, and the player that was taken right after Chris Jenkins, Mike Sandstro, was a sleeper of one of ours, a guy that would probably go right into the slot immediately and be able to play a little bit outside. But this was a day one starter, a guy that was going to be immediate impact. Also, TJ Tampa was available. We still haven't figured out why he slipped so far, but he still was available. Rakestraw out of Missouri was still available. I thought there were better corners and it was a bigger need, and there was, I think, better value there than getting Chris Jenkins. But I do understand you lost DJ Reader. You wanted to bring in a defensive tackle at this point in time, and Chris Jenkins at that position. Again, good pick. I just felt they should have gone in a different direction from a position standpoint.
Yeah, and I understand that totally because I like Chris Jenkins a lot too. The only thing I can think of is they just must have had a higher grade on him than the corners that were available. But I'm with you. I think I would have addressed corner earlier than they did in this draft. But Chris Jenkins at 49, that defense really struggled. They were 32nd in the league in yards per play allowed. So they had to beef up the front of that defense. And I think he is going to be a guy who's an impact player day one.
In the third round, now they had 2 picks. The first of their 2 picks, they picked up Jermaine Burton out of Alabama. Now, this is a guy that can, flash and run. We know what the situation is with T. Higgins, that either they're going to trade him this year or this is definitely going to be his last year in Cincinnati. And this is a guy that you're bringing in that's potentially, I'm using air quotes, that you're probably going to have slide into that opposite side of Jamar Chase. However, Jermaine Burton doesn't have enough throws, and again, we know what type of offense and the quarterback that Alabama had. But Troy Franklin out of Oregon was still available. This is a guy that had 81 catches, basically 1,400 yards, and then 15 touchdowns. The production that was there out of this type of player, who's a bigger player at 6'2", as opposed to Jermaine Burton at 6 feet. But then again, we go to the production and the style of offense that they were running out there in Oregon, kind of fits more what Cincinnati does and the quarterback that Joe Burrow has. And I think he would have been a better fit here if this is where you felt you had to go at wide receiver. Again, alluding to where the situation is at with T. Higgins.
Yeah, I understand the need to take a wide receiver there. I think you hit it perfectly. But I'm with you. Troy Franklin was still on the board. How about Roman Wilson also was still on the board, and Jalen McMillan also on the board? I would have taken any one of those wide receivers over Jermaine Burton.
With the second, third round pick going back to the interior D lineman, well, again, they got McKinley Jackson. Now, that one confused me for a minute because you literally just went previously before that. You went and got Chris Jenkins, and then you come back into the third round and you get McKinley Jackson. But I understand once I started looking at their books is that BJ Hill this is the last year for BJ Hill, and you're also losing him. We know that there's a lot of chatter around Trey Hendrickson looking for another contract. So where there's smoke, there's fire there. They did draft Miles Murphy last year, so perhaps they're beginning to restructure that defense and restack the deck in terms of what they possibly have going on there. But once again, I just felt that there were some things that they could have done there. Literally the pick right after them is Peyton Wilson. And you have needs at linebacker as well to address in the defense at every level, because I feel at every level they have an issue at every single level. Again, really more with the fact with contracts or the defensive line, they have a solid to weak or average linebacking core, and we already addressed what was going on in the defensive backfield. But I felt that Peyton Wilson would have been better value and a better pick here. And also, again, TJ Tampa, since you had already gone defensive tackle in the second round, TJ Tampa was still available, and you did not address your biggest need, which was the defensive backfield.
Yeah, I understand the pick. I like McKinley Jackson, a run stuffer, a guy who's going to clog up the middle, and that's an issue for them. And you hit on it. Going forward, I think this is more of a future pick. They're kind of looking down the road here, realizing with him and Chris Jenkins, maybe they can kind of start to rebuild that front. I don't hate the pick. I don't love it either, though, because I do think there were some better players still on the board.
You're going to start to see a running theme with me here in terms of the Cincinnati Bengals. Because, again, some of these picks are actually good, but when you start to look at the value that was there for other players, it's the feeling that they simply could have done better and done a better job, looking at what was available, seeing what was available. And once again, here we go again with the 4th and 5th round pick. So in the 4th round, 15th overall pick, they go and they pick Eric All, an oft-injured tight end. They just signed Mike Gesicki. They have an inline tight end in Drew Sample. I'm not even sure if Eric All will be on this team in 2 to 3 years, or even if he's going to be able to even see any playing time. So that's issue number 1. Now, issue number 2 is the fact that once again, you neglected to address the defensive backfield. And at this point in time, TJ Tampa is still on the board, and you ignored that. Not only that, you did move on from Joe Mixon and you traded him. I know you signed Zach Moss, but also on the board there were Jalen Wright and Bucky Irving. Another 2 running backs that I thought you could have used in your backfield that would be third down backs that you can use as another weapon, immediate weapon, and day one production, things that you're not going to get from Eric Hall coming out of the 4th round. And leading into that, Josh Newton in the 5th round. Now you finally decide to address the DB position. You address it with Josh Newton, a guy, Brad always talks about he does not like those 40 times. So that's an issue that now when you finally decide to address it, look at who you addressed it with. So that 4th and 5th round picks, I believe, are just complete debacles based upon what was on the board there in the 4th round that you could have been able to get. Because I believe 1,000% believe that Eric All would have possibly been there in the 5th round. If not, I think that's fine given what you brought in the offseason and some of the things that you would have probably been able to develop. Because if not, you could have come back later. Johnny Wilson, if I'm not mistaken, went into the 6th or 7th round to the Eagles, a 6'7" wide receiver who, similar to Jimmy Graham, is really going to be a tight end in this league. So I felt you could have gotten value there, and as opposed to trying to use Eric All here, I just feel that they really screwed up that 3rd through 5th round picks there. I'm having a hard time understanding what that war room looked like during those picks.
Yeah, Alex, we talked about the first half of this draft. I really like what they did for the most part, but it does kind of drop off here in the middle because I think Eric All is a guy, the tight end out of Iowa. I can see the upside, but I don't love the selection there in the 4th. I actually think Tanner McLachlan, the tight end out of Arizona that they took in the 6th, I think he's a better prospect. And I actually think that's one of their best, if not their very best, late pick that they had in this draft. Josh Newton, the cornerback out of TCU, undersized, not fast enough. Yes, he was productive at TCU, but I really don't like that pick in the 5th. And you hit on it there. That middle part of the draft, there was a lot of talented players on the board, and I think they reached for some of these guys and they avoided some other really good players that they could have taken. Kind of a mixed bag for me when you look at this Bengals draft. Definitely some things I like, but I think they had some head-scratching moments as well.
And you know what? That leads me to actually downgrade the initial draft that I had written down, which would have been a B-. I'm actually going to have to put them at a C just based upon what they didn't address. And of course, these draft grades are just based on what was there and what was available. These guys, hell, for all we know, all 7 of these guys can go on to be famous for all we know. But initially, where we're having the reaction to directly after the draft, what was available and what they did. And I said previously, as a GM or as a front office, you make your bones in the middle rounds. And I just feel that they completely fumbled this, so they get a C from me.
Yeah, I might go C+ there. I was kind of leaning towards B- as well, maybe C+, because like we talked about, some missed opportunities there. But the first half of the draft is still pretty solid. If you enjoy the podcast, do us a favor and subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Guys, hope you enjoyed the episode. We've got more coming next week, more YouTube exclusive coverage, and more draft grades. But once again, guys, I'm Brad Fowler. He's Alex Higdon. This is Pint Glass Football, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Pint Glass Football Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Twitter at PGF Podcast.
You know what's important when you're having a good time? Staying hydrated. And that's where Liquid IV comes in, the category-winning hydration brand that's fueling your well-being. With just one stick of Liquid IV, you get 2 times faster hydration than water alone, plus 5 essential vitamins to keep you feeling your best. And let's not forget about the convenience factor. The packaging is perfect for on the go, whether you're tailgating or just hanging out on the couch. But what really sets Liquid IV apart is the amazing flavors. Personally, I'm all about the Concord grape and lemon lime. And with 3 times the electrolytes of traditional sports drinks, Liquid IV is made with premium ingredients to give you the hydration and nourishment you need. Get 20% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use code PGFP at checkout. That's 20% off anything you order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code PGFP at liquidiv.com. Zencastr is the ultimate web-based podcasting solution. It provides high-quality audio and video podcast production and hosting. With a full suite of professional tools, podcasters can seamlessly record, produce, and publish studio-quality content all from one dashboard. Zencastr's post-production process takes the headache out of audio production. Set the right podcast loudness and levels while reducing background noise with a click of a button. Coordinating all your guests to record in person is painful and tedious. Easily invite up to 11 participants per recording with one click. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code PGFP and you'll get 30% off your first 3 months of Zencastr Professional. I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.